Commissioner, it's rumored that the rate of street muggings has dropped since the vigilante became headline news. Is that true?
Not true. We could be looking for a man who's had all members of his family killed by muggers. He shoots that pistol pretty good. Combat veteran.
We want this man to quit, desist, go away, to stop.
I guess we'll just have to go to my house. Is that all right with you?
Talking right into it. The signatures are promised to appear in court sometime on before this date. It's not an admission of guilt.
I should hope not. In America.
He has tasted good and evil in your bedrooms and your bars, and he's traded in tomorrow for today. Running from his devil's lord and reaching for the stars and losing all he loved along the way. From the rock, going up was worth coming down.
Can you hear us?
The 1970s were the most brutal decade in cinema history. Think of Chinatown, no miracles, no rescues, just a haunting silence as evil wins. Completely, irreversibly. This was the era's specialty, where justice is late and the world breaks you anyway. Forget the happy endings. These are 7 action films where winning and surviving are not the same thing. And sometimes neither happens at all. Let's dive into the grittiest masterpieces of the 70s.
This is Alfredo Garcia. He's about to become a very important man. A private army is scouring 3 countries to find Alfredo Garcia. Someone has offered $1 million for his head.
If I ever get my hands on him, I'm going to kill him.
All we require from you is physical proof that Garcia is dead.
And we're prepared to settle for his head.
Bring me the head of Alfredo Garcia.
Alfredo's our saint. He's a saint of our money.
I want to take it to him.
I love you. Innocent people will suffer.
With Alfredo's help, we can do anything, honey.
Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, 1974, directed by Sam Peckinpah. If you have never heard of this film, that is not an accident. This is the movie that even Sam Peckinpah's biggest fans have trouble defending out loud, and yet it is probably the most honest thing he ever made. The setup sounds almost like a dark joke. A low-rent American piano player named Benny, scraping by in Mexico, gets hired to track down the severed head of a man named Alfredo Garcia, who got a wealthy Mexican patriarch's daughter pregnant. The reward is $10,000. Benny figures he knows where the grave is. Simple job. Except nothing about this film is simple, and nothing about it is clean. And by the time Benny gets that head into the burlap sack on the passenger seat of his beat-up car, You already understand that this story is not going to end well for anyone involved. What makes this film so relentless is not the violence. It is the intimacy. Peckinpah shot this one cheap, fast, and personal, and it shows in every frame. Warren Oates plays Benny like a man who has already been broken by life before the movie even starts. And watching him talk to that sack on the seat beside him, like it is his only friend in the world, is simultaneously hard-hitting and genuinely heartbreaking. The film was despised by critics when it came out. One reviewer called it the worst film of the year. Peckinpah reportedly said it was the only film he had ever made exactly the way he wanted to, without studio interference, without compromise, without anyone telling him to soften the edges. Looking at the ending, you believe him completely. The 1970s gave Peckinpah room to burn everything down, and Alfredo Garcia is what happens when a filmmaker with nothing left to lose makes a movie about a man with nothing left to lose. It became a cult classic slowly, over decades, quietly finding the audience it always deserved. Quentin Tarantino has cited it. Directors who care about the craft talk about it in hushed tones. And if you watch it today, the final 5 minutes hit just as hard as they did 50 years ago, maybe harder, because now you know it was never going to end any other way.
You do your job, and sometimes you find the answers to questions that should never be asked. Or you find out what happens to people who ask them.
Hold it there, kitty cat. You're a very nosy fellow, kitty cat, huh? You know what happens to nosy fellows? I dislike the words.
Maybe you even get close to the truth. Jack Nicholson and Faye Dunaway in a Robert Evans production of a Roman Polanski film, Chinatown. Tough. You get tender. You get close to each other.
If Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia was the movie Hollywood ignored, then Chinatown 1974 was the one they showered with praise, awards, and the title of masterpiece. Yet somehow, they still failed to grasp its true meaning. Directed by Roman Polanski and written by Robert Towne, it stars Jack Nicholson as private investigator Jake Gittes and Faye Dunaway as the woman who walks into his office and changes his life forever. On the surface, it appears to be a classic hard-boiled detective story. Gittes is hired to tail a man, uncovers a conspiracy involving the Los Angeles water supply, and follows the trail until he stands at the center of something massive, corrupt, and deeply personal. He is smart. He is persistent. He unearths the truth. In any ordinary movie, that would be enough. A detective who finds the truth is supposed to win. That is the deal. That is the genre contract the audience paid for. But Chinatown rips that contract to shreds in its final 10 minutes, handing you back the pieces with a look that says, "You should have known better." What makes this film a cultural landmark is its unflinching coldness. Jake Gittes does everything right by the rules of detective noir, but it doesn't matter, because those rules don't apply to men like Noah Cross. Played by John Huston with a chillingly jovial, aristocratic evil, Cross is so wealthy and well-connected that simply being right about him changes nothing. Released in the shadow of Watergate, at a time when Americans were watching powerful men escape consequences on live television, Chinatown captured that national dread and put it on screen with breathtaking precision. The ending remains one of the most debated finales in Hollywood history. Polanski rejected Robert Towne's original script, which offered a different resolution, and insisted on the version that left audiences numb. Towne was furious. The audience was devastated. 50 years later, the closing line of the film is still quoted, still felt, and still hits like a punch to the gut every time it's rewatched. Chinatown didn't just influence the films that followed. It reset the entire debate on what American cinema was allowed to say about power, corruption, and the devastating price of knowing the truth. If Chinatown showed us a system too corrupt to fix from the outside, then Taxi Driver, 1976, ventures into an even darker realm, asking what happens to the man on the inside who decides to fix it by any means necessary. Directed by Martin Scorsese, written by Paul Schrader, and starring Robert De Niro, this is the film that transformed De Niro from a respected actor into an eternal cultural icon. Travis Bickle drives through the night-shift streets of New York City and despises everything he sees. The New York of 1976 was brutal, financially collapsed and visually decaying. Scorsese captures it like a neon-soaked fever dream. The steam and rain-slicked streets create the sensation of being trapped inside a breaking mind. Travis is a Vietnam veteran, an insomniac, a man who cannot connect with others no matter how hard he tries. The film tracks this disconnection as it slowly curdles into something intense, dangerous, and directed outward at a world he believes needs cleansing. What makes Taxi Driver so haunting 50 years later isn't just the climactic shootout, though it is incredibly powerful, staged with Scorsese's cold, almost surgical precision. It's what happens afterward. Travis survives. The press hails him as a hero. The girl he saved returns home, and in the final scene he is back behind the wheel. Same city, same night, same eyes staring into the rearview mirror. You look at his face and realize that nothing has changed inside him. The city has its hero, but Travis has nothing. Whatever was shattered in him at the beginning remains shattered at the end. It has only been momentarily silenced. Paul Schrader wrote the script during one of the lowest points of his life, starving, sleepless, and desperate, and that raw agony lives in every line Travis speaks. The film was polarizing upon release, hailed by critics yet deeply unsettling for audiences who weren't sure whether to cheer for this man or fear him. As it turns out, the answer is both. That ambiguity is why Taxi Driver endures. It has influenced everything from the Joker to entire generations of filmmakers who realized that Scorsese had found a way to craft a hero's journey that ends exactly where it began. And that is the truest kind of loss.
Commissioner, it's rumored that the rate of street muggings has dropped since the vigilante became headline news. Is that true?
Not true.
We could be looking for a man who's had a member or members of his family killed by muggers. He shoots that pistol pretty good. Combat veteran.
We want this man to quit, desist, go away, to stop.
Death Wish, 1974, is a movie that 1974 audiences didn't perceive as a tragedy at all. They cheered. They stood up in theaters. They left feeling satisfied, energized, and ready for more. And that reaction, that collective, enthusiastic embrace of a story that is actually about a man's internal self-destruction is exactly what makes Death Wish one of the most fascinating and unsettling films of the decade. Directed by Michael Winner and starring Charles Bronson as Paul Kersey, it gives us an architect, a husband, a father, and then something else entirely. The plot is simple and brutal in the way only 1970s cinema could be. Paul Kersey is a mild-mannered New York liberal, the kind of man who believes in the system, in due process, and that society has the answers to its own problems. Then, 3 men break into his apartment. His wife is murdered, his daughter is left catatonic from the trauma, and the police politely tell him they probably won't catch those responsible. In that moment, something in Paul Kersey goes still and cold, a part of him that will never return. He begins going out at night with a gun. He begins to hunt. What the audience cheered for was the catharsis, and Bronson delivered it with a stony-faced expressiveness that made him one of the era's defining action stars. The vigilante fantasy was intoxicating in a New York City that felt truly out of control, and Winner captured the streets with a gritty, intense realism that made the danger feel immediate and real. But look closely, and what you are actually watching is a man who has lost everything and is now losing his own humanity, piece by piece, night by night. He is replacing his agony with adrenaline, because the pain is the one thing he can no longer endure. Paul Kersey does not heal. He does not find peace. He finds a purpose, and the film is honest enough to show you that those two things are not the same. By the end, he has become someone his wife would never recognize, and the movie leaves it there, unresolved. While Death Wish spawned 4 sequels, each louder and less concerned with the psychological complexity of the original, the 1974 film remains a deeply strange artifact. It is a movie that America embraced as a power fantasy, but which is, in reality, a portrait of irreparable loss wearing the mask of a revenge thriller.
Entirely different view of the world of crime. The story of 2 tough men in their struggle for survival against the largest criminal corporation in America, the Outfit.
Put your hands flat on the table.
Who are you, friend?
Macklin.
You hit a bank. You and your brother and a guy called Cody. Before your stretch, Midwest National in Wichita.
Right.
The Outfit owns it. So you know how it is. You hit us, we hit you.
The Outfit controls business, politics, police. It affects the lives of all of us. Together, they're one of the most powerful teams in motion picture history.
Shut up!
Your damn gun.
Off, hands behind your head.
Macklin and Cody, independent professionals who've got the guts to fight back. You will never see a more exciting story of 2 tough men against overwhelming odds.
And if Death Wish was about a man who wins every battle but loses himself in the process, then The Outfit, 1973, is about a man who wins every battle but loses everything around him. By the time the final gunshot echoes, he is left just as empty. Directed by John Flynn and starring Robert Duvall as Earl Macklin, the film follows a professional criminal fresh out of prison who walks straight into a war he didn't start, and one he can't end on his own terms. The plot is lean and stripped down, typical of the best 1970s crime cinema. Macklin is released only to find his brother murdered by the Outfit, a national crime syndicate, because the 2 brothers unknowingly robbed a bank owned by the mob. The Outfit considers the debt unpaid. Macklin, ever the rational professional, takes a simple stance: pay him what his brother's life was worth, or he'll keep hitting their operations until the math works in his favor. What follows is one of the tensest, quietest cat-and-mouse thrillers of the decade, a movie that moves like a freight train and never needs to raise its voice. Robert Duvall plays Macklin with a cold, breathtakingly suppressed ferocity. This is not a man of many words or explanations. He states his terms once and gets to work. The action is punchy and staged with a brutal realism. No flash, no slow motion, just fast, consequential, and real. Joe Don Baker stars as Cody, Macklin's partner, nearly stealing the show with a loose, dangerous energy that perfectly balances Duvall's stillness. Based on the novel by Donald Westlake, writing as Richard Stark, it captures the ruthless efficiency of the legendary Parker series better than almost any other adaptation. But here is what the movie denies you, a victory that means anything beyond the immediate transaction. Macklin survives. He gets the money.
Then he drives away from a landscape littered with people who are dead, wounded, or gone,
simply because they were standing near him when the mob came calling. As the film ends, you realize Macklin hasn't won. He has simply endured. There is a very specific kind of loneliness in being the last man, standing after everyone else has been cleared away. The outfit never received the recognition it deserved upon release, overshadowed by the year's bigger hits and overlooked by audiences. It remains one of the great lost crime films of the 1970s. If you haven't seen it, the next 2 hours of your evening are already decided.
Monday morning, 9 a.m., right here.
I guess we'll just have to go to my house. Is that all right with you?
Talk her right into it. The signatures are promised to appear in court sometime on or before this date. It's not an admission of guilt.
I should hope not. In America.
He has tasted good and evil in your bedrooms and your bars, and he's traded in tomorrow for today. Running from his devil's lord and reaching for the stars and losing all he loved along the way. From the rock going up was worth coming down.
We are almost
of all the films on this list, Cisco Pike, 1972, is the most obscure, the most overlooked, and yet it contains one of the most accurate and suffocating portraits of a man being systematically crushed by a world that refuses to let him go. The story of why this film nearly vanished involves a studio that had no idea what they had made, and a release strategy that guaranteed no one would ever find it. It remains a masterpiece that feels like a secret not enough people know. Directed by Bill L. Norton, it stars Chris Christopherson in his first lead role as a former rock star turned small-time L.A. dealer. Cisco is a man living on the fringes of the music scene, trying to stay clean and rebuild something from the wreckage of his past fame. Then, Detective Holland, played by Gene Hackman in one of his most terrifyingly grounded performances, shows up with a demand. Holland has 100 kilograms of confiscated marijuana, and he needs it sold in 72 hours. Cisco does it, or Holland sends him back to prison. It's that simple. What makes this film so unbearable to watch is that Hackman doesn't play Holland as a cartoonish crooked cop. He plays him as a man who genuinely believes the world owes him something, and that self-righteousness makes him far more dangerous than simple greed. Every scene between Hackman and Christopherson crackles with an asymmetric tension, the kind where one man holds all the power and both men know it, but neither will say it out loud. Christopherson, a real musician himself, brings an authenticity no acting class could produce. The specific exhaustion of a man who was once somebody and is now just trying to survive a city that doesn't forgive. The Los Angeles of 1972 captured here is gorgeous yet indifferent, Filled with people in various stages of the same slow failure Cisco is enduring. The film moves with a loose, documentary-style intimacy that makes everything feel immediate and dangerous. Cisco burns every bridge and every scrap of goodwill to meet an arbitrary deadline set by a man who will never let him go anyway. When it's over, the promised exit is revealed as a lie. Cisco Pike ends with its hero back exactly where he started, only now he lacks everything that once made starting over possible. The film nearly disappeared after its release, surviving for decades as a lost relic. It was slowly rediscovered by dedicated cinephiles who speak of it with a certain reverence, as if they've witnessed a truth most movies are simply too afraid to tell.
In 1933, America had hit the skids, or by his fists. Columbia Pictures presents Hard Times.
What the hell are you doing? You don't want no trouble. Just you pay your debts.
Speed was the hustler.
It was too damned easy. There ain't no rules about that, except who wins.
Cheney was the hitter.
You ever get scared when you do work?
I don't think about it.
Together, they just couldn't be beat.
You give us our damn money now. You want that money? Take it.
No, I got the gun.
I don't think you want to use it.
That's one way. You want to see another?
And here we are. I didn't save this film for last because it made the most money or won the most awards. I saved it because it does something almost no other 1970s action movie achieves with such quiet, devastating precision. It presents an extraordinary man who wins every confrontation, who is never physically overpowered, and then leads him to the edge of everything he could ever want, only to have him voluntarily turn his back and walk away, alone, with nothing. And somehow it feels like the truest ending imaginable. Hard Times, 1975, Walter Hill's directorial debut, stars Charles Bronson as Cheney, a Depression-era drifter who arrives in New Orleans with no past, no name of consequence, and no plan other than the next fight. Hill builds this 1933 world with a gritty, vivid authenticity. You can feel the heat, the desperation, and the peculiar dignity men cling to when everything material has been stripped away. Cheney finds a fast-talking promoter named Speed, played by James Coburn in one of his most charismatic performances, and together they enter the world of illegal bare-knuckle street fighting. Cheney is immediately, visibly different from everyone else. He is calm, restrained, almost supernaturally economical with his movements and his words. When he hits someone, the fight is essentially over. Hill shoots these scenes with a brutal, breathless directness. Every punch feels real and consequential in a way that flashy choreography can never replicate. What this film understands, and why it deserves the #1 spot, is that Cheney isn't fighting to build anything. He isn't fighting to win something back. He isn't fighting toward any destination involving other people, legacy, or the kind of future normal men build through relationships and wealth. He fights because it is the only thing he is truly, completely good at. And because as long as he is fighting, he doesn't have to face the vast, quiet emptiness that surrounds him the moment the struggle ends. There is a woman, played by Jill Ireland, with a warmth that makes her scenes with Bronson genuinely moving. She offers him exactly what a man in his position should want: stability, connection, a reason to stop moving. And Cheney consider it. The film gives him that moment sincerely, without rushing. He weighs the choice, and then he walks away. That final scene is unforgettable. Cheney takes his cut of the money from a final, grueling fight and says goodbye to Speed in the way men of that time and temperament do, meaning he says almost nothing at all. Yet those few words carry the weight of everything left unsaid throughout the film. Then he walks down a New Orleans street, away from the camera, away from the woman, away from the only place he stayed long enough to almost become a man with ties. The city doesn't notice. The street doesn't care. Cheney grows smaller in the frame until the movie ends, and you're left understanding that he will keep walking until there is nowhere left to go. This isn't a tragedy that befell him. It is a circumstance he chose, and that choice is the saddest part of all. Walter Hill would go on to make classics like The Driver and The Warriors, careers filled with men bound by codes in a world without safety nets. But Hard Times remains the purest distillation of everything he understood about that kind of man and that kind of loneliness. Bronson never received the acclaim he deserved for this role because audiences wanted him to be the vigilante, the invincible force. Here he is something far more interesting and harder to watch. A man who could have everything the genre promises its heroes but simply doesn't want it. The film is brave enough and sad enough to let that be the whole story. 7 films where the hero fights with everything and still walks away with nothing. These movies weren't just dark, they were honest. They proved that winning and surviving are not the same thing. Which ending hit you harder? Chinatown, where defeat was forced on the audience, or Hard Times, where the hero chose his own isolation? Leave a comment. I want to see where you land. Subscribe to catch our next countdown. The 70s and 80s action villains so compelling you secretly rooted for them. You won't want to miss it.